The Trauma and Tribulations of a Galactic Envoy, a book review of Erica Amorena's Girl Stolen, a collection of memories.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome everyone to another one of my Exopolitics commentaries. So this one is going to be a book review of a fascinating book called Girl Stolen, a collection of memories by Erica Amoreena. So this is me reading an article, a book review I've written, along with commentary that you can find on my website, exopolitics.org. So I'm going to bring up the review article that I wrote so that you can follow along as I read it and actually comment on various elements. So I just finished reading Girl Stolen, a collection of memories, where she describes traumatic experiences she has had with grey aliens. She referred to them as the Maitreya, who abducted her on numerous occasions during her childhood. So going all the way back as early as she can remember, she remembers having been abducted by these greys who would lift her up out of her bed and move her through the wall, and she would then have these abduction experiences on their ships. So Erica describes how the greys conditioned her not to trust anyone but them by creating fake holographic scenes that would alienate her from her sister and brothers. Sorry, her sister, mother and father. So she describes, my sister and I were like twins, besties. We knew each other's deepest secrets, and we knew each other's everything, and it was used against us. She was my only and best friend. They abducted us to manipulate our relationship towards each other. After this event, my sister would become untrusting and suspicious. She would feel betrayed and take every chance she had to betray me back. She stopped keeping my secrets. Instead, she would tell everyone that was everything that was sacred to me. So what happened was that she and her sister would be abducted. They would be taken to some location by these grey extraterrestrials, Maitreya, and they would play mind games on them by creating false holographic screens of one sister being tortured or abused, and the other one kind of like laughing and smiling or doing things to indicate that she was getting, that she was enjoying it, that she was doing nothing to help. And so that way they would turn the sisters against each other. And they did the same thing with Erica and her father, where he would watch her being cruelly abused, let's just say, by other humans, and she would see him as just sitting there doing nothing to help her. And so that is how the greys, using these holographic images that they were able to produce in the mind of their abductee, their victim, they could turn them against others. So it just shows how insidious these abductions could be. So the greys used Erica in their genetic breeding program throughout her life. Even at 50 years old, she was still being used. Even after getting a hysterectomy, she was still being used to carry the fetus of a genetically engineered hybrid using her DNA and the DNA of the extraterrestrials in her body up until, I think it's typically the end of the first trimester. So, and then the greys would abduct the person again and remove the fetus from the womb. And so that happened to Erica throughout her life. and also at 50 years of age. So it just shows that the Greys could use their victims for an extended period of time. And now Erica, I don't think she described exactly how many Grey hybrids that she had produced, but I suspect it was in the dozens. I mean, you can imagine throughout a lifetime of being used for these experiments with the regular abductions that, they definitely could use one victim to create dozens of hybrids, and that would then be taken out of the womb of the victim, and then raised on the ships, being used for what purpose? Well, that's there's a lot of speculation for that. I mean, David Jacobs, he described these grey hybrid experiments as being aimed at creating a replacement for humans on Earth. So that's certainly something that has been described for many decades. So it seems that Erica, she was forcibly used as part of that grey genetic hybridization program. Okay, so another aspect are the military abductions. So Erica describes the military abductions that occurred after her Grey abduction experiences. So this is actually common. It happens to a lot of people who have been abducted by Grey aliens. Then they describe being abducted by military personnel. And I have interviewed Melinda Leslie, where she went through this, and she's done extensive research on, she calls them reabs because they're actually a re-abduction, rather than MILAB, she calls them reabs. But there was a book by Helmut Lammer called MILABs, where he described this process. Unfortunately, that book is hard to get. He was definitely targeted by the deep state after he wrote it, and I don't believe he was ever able to come to the United States to promote his book, or if he did, it was only once, because I've never heard of him being in the United States, even though I really did want to meet him, and I did try and get in touch with him, but never did. Okay, so Erica, she describes how advanced technology was used by military operators to walk through walls in subsequent abductions where she was physically traumatized in many ways. This is yet another example of how the Grey abduction phenomena is closely related to MILABs as a result of secret agreements in the military intelligence community monitoring Grey activities. So this is important because what Erica described was the military personnel, they would be able to walk through walls, that they would be able to create a portal in the wall and walk through it. And so where were they? Were they on their craft? They're probably on their craft. Almost certainly they would be on their craft, because that's where the technology would be. That technology would create some kind of portal that opens up into the room of the abductee. I mean, it's really horrible to think about. And when that all of us, everyone, could actually be subjected to this kind of MILAB, because they have the technology to just open walls, create a portal through a wall, and just walk into someone's bedroom and take them, and then do whatever it is that they're going to do as part of the military abduction. So shows you how advanced the technology has become. And of course, the Greys were doing this as well. So this suggests that the Grey technology that was used was eventually acquired by the military intelligence community, and they were doing it on MILABs. Now, people might ask, well, why do they do MILABs? Well, if you think about it, it's kind of pretty logical. If you're part of the military intelligence community, you know that the Grey extraterrestrials are targeting specific groups of individuals. And so you'd be interested in finding out, well, firstly, who are they abducting? Secondly, you want to find out, well, what is it about their genetics that is significant? Third, what kind of abilities do these people gain as a result of the abductions? Do they display advanced telepathic, psychokinetic abilities and so forth? And fourth, are they going to be used in some kind of an agenda, like Dr. David Jacobs claims that the Greys were creating a hybrid army to replace humans? Were these genetic experiments on these humans part of the creation of this hybrid army to eventually take over the planet? So naturally, I think the military intelligence community would have been interested in that. So it makes a lot of sense why you would have these military abductions or re-abductions, as Melinda Leslie describes them, occurring. Okay, so let's go on. So Erica explains how she was used in a 20-back secret space program where her consciousness was transferred into a clone that was converted into a cyborg. Now, this is something that a number of people have described also. I know Tony Rodriguez, he described how when he was abducted at 10 years of age by the covert community, that his consciousness was transferred into a clone and his physical body was left unaltered. Now, this is where you get very interesting kind of scenarios popping up in terms of how these 20 backs happen. And Tony Rodriguez, I think he describes one of these scenarios, which is that the consciousness is used for a 20 back program. So it's just transferred from the physical body at a particular age, at 10 years old. And I think for Tony, that was around 1983, as I recall. So Tony says that he was then taken up to the moon and onto Mars and eventually to Ceres. Well, before that, he was also taken to Peru and then to Seattle, Washington. And then he was taken to the moon and Mars and inducted into the secret space program where he worked with the Dark Fleet. And at the end of that, his consciousness was returned to the physical body. Now, of course, 20 years had elapsed where his consciousness was used in the secret space program inside of a clone. And the consciousness was just returned back to the original body back in 1983, and that was how it was done in the way Tony Rodriguez describes it. So what was happening here was that in the case of Erica Amoreena, something similar had happened. Her consciousness was transferred out of her physical body, and she was used in a 20 back secret space program. And so her body's transferred into a clone, and that clone was converted or genetically modified into a cyborg. So she describes her time on the planet Ceres in the asteroid belt, where she served under Draco reptilians who controlled the German Dark Fleet stationed there. And Tony Rodriguez says that he spent, I think it was 13 years on Ceres as part of the Dark Fleet. He was working on a transport ship or vehicle. So Erica writes, I have another clear recollection of being inside the colony on Ceres. I was a human cyborg trying to hide from reptilian handlers who owned me. My consciousness was wed biologically and technologically to some kind of mechanism. Inside my mind, I shared my thoughts with a reptilian officer back at Central Command, plus an artificial sentient program. I was part computer, part human slave. So quite disturbing that her thoughts were not her own, that whatever she was thinking was being secretly monitored and possibly influenced by a reptilian using advanced technology to just keep track of her and this AI program. So Erica describes how she was used as a frequency key by the Orion Greys and the Fourth Reich Germans. They used my frequency as an innocent child to operate jump gates. So Erica was describing this happened when she was very young, that she was used in a 20 and back program while still a child. So obviously she carried that energy of a child, that innocence. And that's what they wanted. They wanted a childlike innocence, someone who could open up portals or operate jump gates. In my child's memory, it seemed like I would just walk to another building, but I was actually helping to transport these captive beings and other cargo between jump gates that connected the moon to Dulce, New Mexico. The jump gates required a high-frequency individual or childlike innocence to operate them. If I was used as a transport frequency, I was used as a transport frequency key to use the jump gates between the moon, Dulce, Antarctica, and other planets. Now, this is not surprising because for those of you that are aware of the Montauk project that ran from 1971 up until 1984, they used over 10,000 children. According to Stuart Swerdlow and other survivors, they used up to 10,000 children to operate these stargates and other kinds of advanced technology experiments that were being conducted there in Montauk, which is in Long Island, New York. And they chose children because children had the vibration, the frequency to be able to safely go through jump gates or to open up jump gates, as opposed to adults who would have extreme difficulty, be severely injured, or have other things happen to them, which made it impractical to do the research on how to use these jump gates or these portals before they had been perfected. Now, obviously, at some point they perfected the technology, which is why the Montauk project ran up until 1983 when it was ended. So I think after that, they had perfected the technology. So now adults could go through these portals. And of course, as I've already mentioned, in the MILABs, you have adults, military operators, operating portals that would open up in a person's bedroom and they could abduct that person. So according to Erica, so she was used as a frequency key to open up these portals, and they would be used to transport people and technologies, objects, resources, and so forth between the Earth, Moon, Dulce, Antarctica, and other planets. So she was used extensively. So Erica's exploitation as a clone that was technologically enhanced is very similar to what happened to Rebecca Rose, who describes also being cloned and turned into a cyborg for use by the German Dark Fleet and Draco reptilians. Rebecca claims she was first stationed on Mars and then in the Kuiper Belt at a facility controlled by the Draco reptilians. In an Exopolitics Today interview, she explained that she volunteered for her assignment in order to gather intelligence for positive extraterrestrials on what the Draco reptilians were doing in our solar system. So what Rebecca discussed in my interview with her, and I believe she's stated this elsewhere, was that she incarnated as a starseed on Earth with these enhanced abilities that would draw the attention of the deep state and negative extraterrestrials, because they're always looking for human children with advanced psychic abilities or anything that makes them stand out, whether they have great intelligence or whether they are destined to become a super soldier because of a certain, let's say, resiliency, kind of psychopathic tendencies, whatever it is that it makes a child attractive to those involved in the secret space programs. So they are chosen. And so Rebecca incarnated knowing that she would be chosen to be used in a secret space program because of her psychic abilities. And that's exactly what happened. And the purpose for that was that she was actually working for the Galactic Federation or working for some of the positive extraterrestrials. And she was gathering intelligence on what the Dark Fleet, what the Draco reptilians were doing in our solar system. And the same thing happened. The same realization happened with Tony Rodriguez, that he also realized that he, in fact, was a double agent. That on the one hand, Tony, Rebecca, and even Erica, on a surface level, can believe that consciously they believe at the time that they're victims, that they're being victimized by these cruel extraterrestrials or secret space program operatives, traumatized and abused in many, many ways. But in reality, they have volunteered for a covert mission to gather intelligence on what it is that the dark side is doing. So in a sense, they're double agents rather than victims, and they are helping expose what the Draco reptilians, the Orion Greys, and the secret space programs, the Nachtwaffen, Dark Fleet, and so forth are doing here. And that all goes to positive extraterrestrials who then come up with plans to expose or neutralize all of that. So I've actually done a couple of interviews with Rebecca Rose. This one was in January 2025, so January this year, where I talked to Rebecca, and she talks about her realization that she was, in fact, a double agent for the positive extraterrestrials. Now, Erica describes a number of experiences, and one of these really kind of like was very, very interesting. She describes being on a donut-shaped barge somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, which matched the description of a barge sitting over the Atlantic space arc by the former US Army insider JP. It's likely that she was used in some mission into the Atlantic space arc, but had no recollection of it at the time of writing her book. Well, in fact, I have spoken to Erica, and we do plan to do an interview sometime later in July. And she described visiting this barge and how it was because of a description JP gave in one of his mission updates. So she remembers being on the barge, and later on she remembers the mission to the space arc. So she has been on the Atlantic space arc. And this is no surprise because, as I said, she has certain frequency keys, certain genetic markers that make it possible for her to be able to activate certain technologies like jump gates, portals, and so forth. And so that would equally apply to the technologies in these space arcs. And in my very last update with JP, where he actually was traveling in Japan, he describes being abducted by deep state operatives that wanted to use his frequency keys to activate a space arc in the Pacific Ocean. And so JP was taken there, and what transpired is what's described in my most recent update with JP. I think that's update number 47 with JP. That just came out last week. So definitely the space arcs, they can be activated by humans with certain frequency keys, and Erica is one of those. Okay, so Erica explains how she was able to survive through many years where she was being encouraged by MILAB operators to take her own life. So after she was exploited and used as a child in abductions by these grey extraterrestrials, and the MILABs were being conducted to find out what she was experiencing, what the greys were doing, what kind of uh, special abilities she had, and she was being used in some of the secret space programs to activate technologies like portals, like space arcs, and so forth. So she was being used. Now, at some point, the military intelligence community, and here we're talking about the dark side, people involved in the covert operations, they decided that they had no further use for her, and so they began using this kind of um, voice to mind technology where they could implant suggestions in her, either hypnotically or using this kind of voice to mind technology or voice to brain technology. I can't remember the exact term for it, where they would tell her that she was worthless, life was not meaningful for her, so she should just end it. She should just end it. And so she describes how close she came uh, on many instances to ending her life. And I think she did describe a period where she went through cutting herself with a razor blade, and that's certainly something that she feels that she was being kind of like impelled to do, or being kind of like there was some MK Ultra operating or some kind of advanced technology being used to try to get her to commit suicide, even though she had 3 children and she obviously had something to live for in terms of raising her 3 children. Now, Erica describes the turning point was when she read Niara Isley's book, Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light. In it, Niara describes the many traumas she was subjected to as a sex slave and worker abused in a secret space program run by the US Air Force at the time that was working with greys and reptilians, and how she was able to transcend these disturbing memories, undergo a spiritual transformation, and find her life. Niara's book gave Erica hope that there was a way out of the traumatic experiences she was having. So Niara's story is really a very important one, and it's actually backed up by documentation. Niara was served in the U.S. Air Force from I think it was 1980 to 1984, a 4-year term, and she was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base. But for I think it was a 1-month period or 3-month period, she was sent over to Tonopah test range, and there she actually saw a flying saucer craft that she was tracking on an auto tracking device that she was specifically trained to do by the Air Force. That was the most advanced auto tracking radar at the time. Excuse me. And so she described how after doing the auto tracking and failing to track this object that was showing up on the radar, that she went outside. She and a colleague went outside and they saw a flying saucer. Well, they were not supposed to see that. So what happened next was kind of like a period of hell where she was traumatized, sexually abused, cruelly exploited, subjected to some really damaging kind of like mind control technologies, taken to the moon, eventually also to Mars as a part of a secret space program, where again she was exploited, both for having exceptional kind of like intellectual abilities which suited her to be a librarian, but also she was ruthlessly exploited as a female sexually as well. So, I mean, very traumatic stuff. But, I mean, to Niara's credit, she was able to deal with all of that and somehow come through it by embracing the light. That's the title of her book, how she was able to find a spiritual method, a spiritual way of dealing with the information. And eventually she discovered that she was actually connected with a positive group of extraterrestrials who were actually conducting espionage on what the Dark Fleet were doing. And in fact, she actually described how one of the extraterrestrials that was part of these abusive programs recognized her and said to the human operatives, "Oh my God, do you know who she is? She shouldn't be here," because this extraterrestrial recognized that she was a starseed with a powerful group of extraterrestrials. So they stopped working with her, but the damage was done. Niara had all the memories of what they had subjected her to. So all of those memories, all of that intelligence went through to this powerful group of extraterrestrials that were monitoring what the dark side were doing. So, in fact, Niara was a double agent, as was Tony Rodriguez, as I mentioned earlier. And so Erica read this book, and it really, as she said, it helped her deal with her traumas. So ultimately, Erica was able to free herself from the Grey abduction program by verbally stating definitive commands to be left alone. She wrote and this is very important. I mean, what Erica did was that she was able to connect through the inspiring example of Niara Isley. She was able to connect with her higher self, or with her heart center, if you want. And that gave her the strength to be able to make these declarative statements that would end the Grey hybrid program. So you can only do this. You got to feel your power. You got to feel your connection to source energy. And then when you make these declarative statements, then the negative extraterrestrials are compelled to obey. Because it's not just something you think, it's something you have to feel. So this is what Erica said, and it's described in her book. And I'm just going to read the first part of it, because if you want to read the full thing, then I recommend that you get Erica's book. So this is what Erica wrote. Quote, this is what Erica wrote in her book, but it is the statement that she made to the Grey extraterrestrials who, up until this time, were abducting her. So she said, quote, "Any and all contracts I made through trickery, fear, intimidation, emotional manipulation are all null and void, going all the way back to my conception. I negate all deals, agreements, contracts, energetic contracts I made with any human or non-human entity from this life and all other lives. I cut all ties to any organizations that think they own me. I am not anyone's asset but my own. I claim my sovereignty. I am my own. I want any and all beings who are tied to me cut now." End quote. So that's in Erica's book, Girls Stolen. And there's more to it, but that gives you an idea. And clearly she felt very powerful connection to her source energy, heart center, the infinity point within, that empowered this statement. So it's got to be more than just an intellectual exercise. You got to feel this. You have to be connected to source energy. And that's what Erica was able to do as a result of reading Niara's book. So Erica says that she next experienced an Arcturian being working on her, and a physical grey implant device then came out in a nosebleed. The physical implant shocked her as it finally proved that her experiences were real and not a figment of her imagination. So, what happened here was that she cut all ties to beings that were using trickery, fear, intimidation, emotional manipulation. And she negated all deals and agreements, contracts with those beings. But what was left were the agreements with the positive beings. And one of those positive beings was the Arcturians. So Erica is connected with the Arcturians. And the Arcturian appeared in her room, and she says that it manipulated her head. It was doing something with her head. And then that morning she had a nosebleed and a grey implant came out. And so that implant was physical evidence that she had been part of the grey hybridization program. So Erica says she trashed that particular physical device, but that later on other devices came out. So I don't know if Erica has held on to any of those other ones, but it would certainly be physical evidence of what happened. So Erica next describes how she rediscovered childhood journals she had written, which described the experiences and traumas that she suffered. Decades later, in reviewing the journal entries that spanned 40 years, I mean, that's a long time. And of course, this is physical evidence. People are always asking for physical evidence. Jean-Charles Moyen had physical evidence. He also had childhood journals where he wrote down and even sketched some of the places that he visited as a child. So that later on in life, when Jean-Charles realized that he'd been part of a secret space program, that is physical evidence supporting his claims. So similarly, Erica has physical evidence supporting her claims in the form of these journal entries that she began as a child and that span 40 years. So that's extensive. And she says that she was shocked and now remembered all the details of what had happened. The journal entries were subsequently used to write her book. So you can imagine her experiences in going through a journey, and she describes what happened in terms of like her going through all of the abuse, all of the trauma, trying to commit suicide because she was being mentally kind of like impulsed to end her life, eventually coming across Niara Islay's book and then just starting to kind of like remove this influence of the extraterrestrials from her life and seeing the physical implants. And then she went home at some point to the home of her mother. And as she was rummaging through a collection of childhood material that her mother had kept, she stumbled across her childhood journals, and she was shocked because when she read what she was writing as a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, I don't know exactly when she began her journals, she says she was shocked by what she described. She was describing the abduction phenomena and the MILABs and all of the SSP experiences that she had, that this was truly shocking. But here was physical evidence, these journals that spanned 40 years that now she had rediscovered in her 50s when she went to stay at her mother's home after another traumatic incident. So the trauma and horrific experiences described in Erica's book are not the sort of thing people make up for self-aggrandizement or to write a book for commercial success. I mean, just think about it. People that talked about pedophilia, that they were abused by priests. Now, why would anyone say something like that if you had not been abused in that way? People don't make up a story like that. because now you have children, or you're an adult, you have a life, a career. Why are you going to make up stories about being sexually abused as a child by priests? Well, similarly, why would Erica, who's got 3 children and was trying to start up a career, why would she make up stories about being abused in multiple ways by grey extraterrestrials and MILABs that were doing terrible things to her? And I don't want to go into detail there. I mean, that's for Erica to talk about later. But it is definitely, to my mind, not the sort of thing a person is going to make up because they want to get fame or they want to have commercial success. That's not that's not how you're going to make a lot of money. I mean, believe me, it's people who have had extraterrestrial experiences, negative experiences. It's not as though you can monetize that at all. It's the opposite, actually. And I know I have been through this myself as a university professor on a full salary. And I, in 2001, decided that I was going to research this exopolitics field. So I went from being not tenured, but I had a full-time position as an assistant professor where I was earning a full-time salary. I was being interviewed on television, on radio. So I risked all of that because I thought that this was the truth, that exopolitics was the truth. And believe me, for the next 10 years, I lived on the bleeding edge. For a short period, I was homeless, lost everything. I don't want to go into detail of that, but that's just to kind of like let you know that people who talk about their extraterrestrial experiences or research, it does damage careers. It's not something that you can monetize at all. Certainly back then, and I think it's a lot better now, but still, it's a challenge. Okay, so this takes me to another aspect of Erica Amoreena's experiences, which are not covered in her book, and these can be found in an online roundtable discussion she did with Dr. Andrea Martin on June 7 of 2025. Dr. Martin is working with approximately 10 individuals who claim to be galactic envoys that include Erica and another individual participating in the roundtable discussion, Michelle Portofria. So I'm going to play an extract from that interview so you get to hear Erica describe something that had happened concerning her experiences on one of the Galactic Federation of Worlds spacecraft, the person or the people she met, her Galactic Envoy partner. So there are millions of starseeds who have come to Earth as part of the Galactic Envoy program, as first described by Elena Danaan. So Elena was the first to talk about the Galactic Envoy program and has said that there are many, talked about thousands, millions of galactic envoys that have come to Earth. Now, the exact number, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows the exact number of galactic envoys. We do know that there are approximately 200 to 250 million starseeds that have come to the Earth. I mean, those are estimates that have come from several sources. Now, how many of those are galactic envoys that they are here because they and a partner or a sibling or close friends on their home world heard about the galactic tyranny that was going to manifest on Earth and in our solar system, and so then they decided to come here and join what Elena Danaan described as the Galactic Envoy program. So Erica believes that she came to Earth as part of the Galactic Envoy program and that she has a Pleiadian husband watching over her who is a senior commander in the Galactic Federation of Worlds, Zora, aka Jor-El. She claims to be in communication with him and to have met him face to face on a Galactic Federation of Worlds spacecraft. So this is important, that she says she has been physically taken to a Galactic Federation of Worlds spacecraft where she has met her Pleiadian husband, whose name is Zor-El. Zor-El. Now, that is not channeled information. It is her direct experience. And what gives added support to this is that she says that one of these other galactic envoys, Michelle Portofria, has also met with her husband Zoar, because her husband and Zoar are close friends. So Erica claims to be in communication with him and to have met him face to face on a Galactic Federation World spacecraft, which she publicly announced in her June 7 roundtable discussion with Dr. Martin. What follows is the relevant passage in the roundtable discussion concerning a letter she received from Zor-El and passed on to Dr. Martin, who read it out in an earlier video published on May 31st. So rather than me reading out what Erica said, I thought it would be better for you to listen to Erica read out, describe herself, what had happened on this craft and her meeting with her partner. So let me play that for you now.
My partner, my husband, who is now Admiral for the Galactic Federation.
And I should add at this point that the two people on the screen are the person on the right, that's Dr. Andrea Martin, and the person on the left, that is Michelle Portofria, who is also a Galactic Envoy. So Erica is just the voice, you're pardon me, that you're hearing.
Oh, I can hear you.
He wrote a letter, and he wrote it, and he handed it to me, and I handed it to Andrea to read the other day. So she was not channeling that letter.
I was reading it.
She was reading it, and it was from me. And despite people in the comments, that was an actual letter written by the actual person.
Oh, it's going to be a shit show. I can feel them all crawling out of the sewer systems now.
But that's okay, because I have enough and even more evidence than would matter. So
Michael now is blocked from all contacts.
But he did indeed write that message from his heart, and Andrea did not channel the message. It came directly from him, speaking it to me face to face, and then I copied it and sent it to her. I have enough physical evidence and validation, and at this time, I sent that letter to Andrea. It did not concern me to have to prove or validate myself to those who would attack us verbally as they did. It doesn't matter. We're not here for that. We're not here for those childish games anymore. We're here for the truth. We're here to support and trust, because if you truly are an envoy and a contactee, you lose the need for needing approval or validation or caring what others do. You don't have an ego that needs filled. You don't need to be the chosen one. You just know what you know.
Exactly.
You can see the big picture. You can see how helping each other and lifting each other up is the most important thing right now. Not going through other people's uplifting messages and tearing them down and creating dissent. The time for, first and second graders is done. We got to do this.
Okay, so let me stop it here, because I think that gives you the crux of the crux of the information here. So this letter that Erica Amoreena got, that was read out by Andrea Martin, that letter was not channeled information. And that's a criticism made against Andrea Martin, who read out this communication from Zor-El, that in fact it was a letter that was written by Erica Amoreena, who had a face-to-face meeting with Zor-El on the GFW spacecraft, and she wrote down the communication. And the shit show, the kind of like the criticisms that they're referring to here is that there are those that want you to believe, or that want to put out a narrative that there is only one person who is in communication with the admiral running the Galactic Federation of Worlds, Jor-El, and which is kind of like, when you think about it, if you have hundreds of envoys, thousands or millions of envoys, why would there only be one person who would be the representative of the Galactic Federation with all the Earth humans? And in fact, there are many envoys who are having communications with different people or different extraterrestrials that are associated with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, including Zor-El or Jor-El. But at the very least, what we need to do, and this is important for me as a researcher, is like, we need to listen to these stories and not just accept at face value someone else's declaration that, oh, this is just nonsense. I'm the only one that knows Jor-El, and so anyone else claiming to have communication with him is a liar, embellisher, fabricator, and so forth. No, we've got to listen and then look at the evidence of what this person's claiming, and what evidence supports that. And in the case of Erica Amoreena, she does have evidence. She does have a range of evidence, and I've talked about some of that in the form of the journal entries that she kept as a child. Also, some of the kind of physical evidence that she has acquired after having freed herself of the Greys. Now, Erica, I have spoken to Erica, and she does have photographs and has video evidence of some of the personnel that have been tracking her, and so she does plan to release this eventually. But the bottom line here is that what you have is Erica Amoreena saying that she was on a GFW spacecraft where she met physically with Zor-El, and he gave her a message, and she wrote that message down in the form of a letter and handed that off to Dr. Andrea Martin, who read it out. So it was not a channeled communication, which is what some people are claiming. That's not channeled at all. And also, Michelle Portofria has also been on the ships. She's also an envoy, and she also knows Zor-El, and so that is also corroboration for what Erica Amoreena has seen. Okay, and I think this is very important, that Erica is absolutely correct, that what truly matters is that Galactic Envoys support each other's experiences and coming out rather than staying silent because of heated opposition from the followers of a particular individual intent on creating a cult-like movement around her narrative. So there are hundreds, thousands, even millions of envoys out there who all have a story to share, and they should be encouraged to come out rather than being intimidated, because there's one person out there at the moment who claims to be the exclusive authority when it comes to the Galactic Federation of Worlds and doesn't acknowledge anyone else having accurate communications and contact with the Galactic Federation. It is the example of there can only be one syndrome, and that's just nonsense. Okay, so I'm looking forward to interviewing Erica to learn more about her experiences and connection with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and to learn more from her first-hand experiences with extraterrestrials and participation in the Galactic Envoy program. So in the meantime, I highly recommend buying a copy of Erica Amorena's book. I think it's a fantastic book. It gives a lot of details of her traumatic background and her remarkable liberation from slave-like conditions created by her grey and military abductors. So sure, it does have a lot of trauma described in there, but it also is uplifting and liberating, because this is the account of a person who's been through hell and has survived and is now talking about it, and has turned her life around and is having face-to-face contact and communication with positive extraterrestrials associated with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So that's it. I hope you do get to read Erica Amoreena's book. It is certainly something that is life-changing for people. So I think just as Niara Isley's book inspired Erica and changed her life, I think this book will also be very helpful for all of those who have been through anything similar and want to learn more about their extraterrestrial heritage. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to doing another update with you in another week or so.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.
At this point, let me promote this webinar that's coming out on Saturday. I'm going to be doing a webinar, Dilemma of a Star Trek Future. And that webinar is something that has been much delayed. It is something that I wanted to actually do back in February of this year. That was the original date when I scheduled this webinar. And the webinar, unfortunately, was delayed because of my actually going to hospital. I was deathly ill. And so this is the webinar, Dilemma of a Star Trek Future. It is going to be held this Saturday at 3 p.m. And here we're going to be talking about what I think are some very important aspects of a Star Trek future, which is what the White Hats and the Space Force, Space Command are steering us towards. And I think there's a lot of very positive aspects of this Star Trek future that the White Hats and the Earth Alliance and Space Force are trying to bring about. But there are also some elements of it that are problematic, that create a dilemma. And so I'll be helped by George Kavasilis and Sarah Bressman-Cosme to talk about the dilemma of a Star Trek future. So that's going to be this Saturday. The whole thing is going to be a full afternoon. It's going to be about 4.5 to 5 hours. So I'm going to start off with a presentation, about an hour and a half. Then there'll be a panel, again, about an hour and a half. And then there'll be a Q&A, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, where you can ask anyone on the panel any questions. So I think you will enjoy this. I personally believe that this was a webinar that the deep state has tried to stop, and I got deathly ill just a few days before this webinar was going to first be held on February 22nd, and it's been delayed 3 times. So now this is the 4th date that's been set for the webinar. Each time I got sick. George Kavasilis has also been attacked In many ways, he's also been having a very, very tough time. And Sarah Bressman also was attacked. And so what are the chances of that? That all of us, in one form or another, were under severe attack around the time this webinar was about to be held. So I don't think it's a coincidence. I think there are things in here that the deep state doesn't want you to know. So anyway, so those of you that want to learn more, please just visit this, go to the website. It's on Crowdcast. You can go to exopolitics.org to find out more about the webinar, or you can just go to Crowdcast and the webinar Dilemma of a Star Trek Future. So thank you for listening, and aloha.